Yeah, I mean, I guess we'll just. The way I thought of this was, I think a lot of people are doing pre-Navi or more likely pre-Zen videos right now, and I think, frankly, we've talked that almost to death.
Yeah, flogging a dead horse. Yeah.
Yeah, I think we'll see what Zen is, and it's going to be good. But I think putting things in context, not just like, oh, well, here's an old CPU, but like what builds used to be like. But I guess before that, I want to talk about RTX Super a little bit, at least with you.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah.
I guess actually what I want to say that I don't. You probably saw my video. I was more angry than usual.
Yeah, I did. I referenced it in my video. I said, for once you lost the plot.
Like I was. And I guess here's why. It's like people were excited. The RTX 2060 it's as strong as the 2070, and then no one was bringing up how they just successfully got everyone to be happy about a $400 60 card. Like, oh my god! And now you're saying it's a good product? It's a oh my god!
Well, the first time they did it was when do you remember the Titan? When they launched the Titan and they called it a Titan, and it was just the GTX 780 just launched a couple of months before they were going to bring out the 7 series, and everybody was like, oh my god. And I remember everybody like in work who knows, like the IT guys in work, did you see the new Titan? Did you see the new Titan? Oh my god, the Titan's amazing. And then like they launched the 780 a couple of months later for like 750 quid or something like that, and it was like 10% slower, but everybody's like, it's such a deal, it's so amazing, it's 10% slower than Titan.
Double the price of a 7970 for 20% more performance. You did it, guys.
That's exactly. Well done, bravo.
Too.
And people bought it up, man. People bought the Titan branding like hook, line, and sinker. Yeah, I think that what you've pretty much seen is you've seen Nvidia do to their low end or their mid tier graphics cards what they did with the high end is essentially just change naming schemes around, release a higher end version of the card, then get rid of that, then release a more budget oriented version of the card, but yeah, it's a little bit cheaper and everybody loses their mind, and that's what they've pretty much done with the low end cards. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
It's to confuse and bamboozle everyone.
Dan, so I do my podcast with my brother Dan, and we were talking the other night, and he was like, I just wonder at what level are they going to stop calling everything premium? And I said, I've been saying it, 3050 Ti. They're going to make that an RTX card, and they're going to say it's premium, and that's why you should pay probably $250 for a 3050 Ti. I'm saying that's going to be where they cut off the premium, and they're going to call everything below $200 peasant cards from now on.
Peasant cards, yeah.
Even though the 3050 Ti will probably be 128-bit and a complete joke, but they'll say, no, this is RTX, though, and it's almost as good at RTX as the 2060 was for just $250.
Well, that's the only thing I found with the new RTX 60 class cards and even the 70 class card, which I just call the 60 class card because it is a 60 class card. But yeah, like that's what I found really weird was the fact that they actually gave it the 256-bit bus on not on the 60, but on the 70 class card that actually had that full bus. But I imagine the only way they could get it to kind of come near close to what a 70 class card upgrade would have been was by having that bus there, you know? Because if do you remember the 660 Ti?
Oh yeah, that dumb card.
Yeah, it was nearly as fast as a 670 though, if you could really overclock the memory. So
it was. I remember MSI specifically had a version that they got reprimanded from NVIDIA's marketing team because they put literally the fastest GDR5 at the time on it, which was pretty fast compared to what most cards had back then, and it was within a few percent of the 670, and they sold it for about $80 less, and they even marketed it. This is literally a 670 for less money. Yeah,
that's the whole like that. This is pretty much the exact same thing. That the 70 class, that the 70 card that doesn't exist anymore, that's been discontinued, is what should have been I'd say a 2060 Ti, and to get it there, they gave it a little bit more memory, you know.
And the reason I called the 660 Ti dumb is it only had 1.5 gigabytes of RAM, just like the GTX 970. Most people just don't realize that. They
made 2 gigabyte variants though.
It said 2 gigabyte, but there are people that have documented the same memory flaws as the GTX 970.
Ah, no, I understand. Yeah. They kind of crippled the memory bus on the final whatever.
But
bits.
People just didn't notice because back then cards used 1.5 gigabytes, unlike now where everything's been using 4 for years. And also, it wasn't a high. Again, the 970 was a 60 class card, but they wasn't perceived as high end, so no one noticed. That's why you saw 3 gigabyte 660 Ti's, not 4, because really that and the 3 gigabyte ones actually would legitimately outperform the 2 gigabyte ones more than they should have.
Yeah,
hard.
Well, the problem is that, like, I think with the 2080 Ti is that I always say in my videos, I say that the 2080 and the 2080 Ti are for people who have more money than sense. They're not going to affect anything. It's not really a high volume product. It's high margin, low volume product. It's for people, who don't really care about money and and they'll always be that way. So those two tiers of card will always be really high and really expensive. And if they want to go off the $3,000, absolutely make more margin but sell less cards. That's what's happening. But at the lower end, where we're dealing with now, the $500 to $250 or $200, that's where the mainstream, most gamers try and save a few pennies to get a decent graphics card that's going to last them 3 years. And they got screwed this time around. And that's my problem,
Yeah, and I guess, actually, I was going to ask you this later, but now's the perfect time to. So I'll go first, but the question is, what did you think Turing in 2018 was going to launch at? And at least me, my gut, and I talked to my friends about it, my gut is they're going to increase prices, and I think the perfect price, if they want to get away with it, is they're going to put the 2080 Ti at $900, and they're going to put the 2080 at like $700, and then the 2070 at like $500, and the 2060, well, I don't know. I thought they'd have a 2060 Ti for $400 and a 2060 for like $330. I thought would be the perfect price, and then I saw $800 for the 2080, and I was like, oh my god, they've just gone mad with power.
Well, I'll be honest, and I really thought, and you're going to call bullshit on this, but I thought that the 2080 Ti would cost $1,200. And I'll explain my reason why after
I don't call
bullshit,
I believe you.
But I thought that the 2080 would cost $700. I thought that but what really fascinated me about the 2080 is that it wasn't as fast as I thought it would be. I thought it would be about 10% faster.
Me too.
The 2070 was the stupidest card I've ever seen, and it was so blatantly obvious to me that it was a 60 card
for $600.
For $600, I could not believe it. I was
that's just the Founders Edition. That's not the real price, Paul.
Yeah, do you remember Jay from Jay's 2 Cents? He was like, this is what it should have been. This is what it should have been. This is what it should have been. And I'm like, no, that's the reject die. And you'd be lucky if you get it for $500. And then when we seen the 1660 Ti's, I was like, I stopped caring anymore. Because they were just like, 50 class cards being sold.
Yeah, at this point, they're almost trolling people. Like, and people were like, isn't this great?
I thought they'd do the 260s like they did last generation, but one would be like 350 and one would be 300, and one would have 6 gigabytes RAM and one would have 8 gigabytes. That's what I thought. The reason why I thought that the 2080 Ti would be $1,200 is because I know how many people bought those Titan XPs. I knew how many people, and I was like, they're gonna just put it at $1,200 because now it's a gaming card and it's the fastest gaming card in the world.
Yeah, and I think what's weird is how it's like, I think for all of us, right? Me, you, Chris, even like Steve at Hardware Unboxed, everyone who talks to each other, I think half of our predictions have been right and half of them have been wrong, and then we've all made different predictions. Like, on the one hand, I thought it would cost less, but then I also thought when it cost more, like you said, the 2080 would perform better. I thought actually the 2070 would perform a bit better too. I really thought the 2070 would be very close to the 2080, but it was a solid 20% weaker for some reason. And then also how when we saw that, we're like, well, it's over. They're all going to sell. Game over. But then the 2080 Ti sold well, but the 2080 kind of sold horribly from what I've heard.
100%. It sold. It's the worst selling card of the line.
Yeah, and it's like, okay, so I guess we might actually live in a world where NVIDIA will just have their second strongest card, which it is. The Titan RTX is the strongest one, everyone. And at about 1,200 or 1,000, and then they might have to lower the price to 600 for the 80. And it's just so funny to literally that. I wonder if they'll try it. They'll literally just go 600 for the 3080, 1,200 for the 3080 Ti. Which, if you think about it, you might as well just call it a different name. And actually, I've said that too. I think the biggest mistake with the 2080 Ti is they didn't just call it a Titan. They really should have just called it a Titan.
Yeah. Yeah, they should have. They should have just called it the RTX Titan and said it was, and because they put RTX in the name, said it's a gaming card. You know, because they got rid of the. Didn't they? I think they just called it Titan Volta, didn't they? Or they got rid of the GeForce and the GTX or whatever. But so they said this is not a gaming card. This is for science and deep learning and all that kind of stuff.
Even though it makes scientific errors anytime it tries to do that stuff.
Pretty much, yeah, and everybody uses it to game. Everybody who ever bought it uses it to game. But anyway, that's besides the point. And on that, I think there is more. I think there's a more SM version, like more SMs out there. I think there's a version because the reticle limit for 12 nanometers is 800 and something.
The top version is 5367 cutacores, and I can't find a product where they've sold that though. To be fair. I think it might be like the GTX 480 where they've disabled one because the die is 815 millimeters squared. At least to my knowledge, they've never made the full Titan Volta, but they could if they ever needed to.
Yeah, and to my knowledge, the RT cores and the Tensor cores don't actually take up a lot of the die. What takes up a lot of the die is the int cores. They've put 64 int shaders in with the 64 traditional shaders. So the FP32 shaders, so that's what increased the die by 20 or 30% or something. Yeah. You know, so yeah, there is, so because there's a Volta card out there with 5,100 and something or whatever, I could imagine they could have a version with 5,000 plus.
Oh yeah, they just, at least there's an Anantech article where they show a full die shot and it has 5,367. But again, I just, on their website, I can't find one version that has them all enabled.
Yeah, I can't either. I haven't heard of any product. I haven't heard of any, but obviously it could be because even though they can make a reticle limit of 800 and something millimeters, they can never get a proper full die or whatever, enough to make a product line, if you know what I mean.
Well, if they can afford to sell the 2080 originally with just one of those SMs, I don't know if they call them SMs, disabled, it probably is pretty mature if that's all they're disabling.
Exactly. So you're like, at least with AMD, and you know my feelings on Navi, but at least with AMD, you're getting the newest process node, the newest die piece of silicon available out there. And some could argue, and I would argue, that they need that in order to catch NVIDIA because NVIDIA's transistors are so bloody good at this point. And I don't want to take anything away from NVIDIA in saying that their architecture is actually good and their transistors are actually magic because of how efficient they are. But at the same time, NVIDIA, when they release a new architecture, do everything to cost save. Everything. They use the oldest process they can get their hands on. They use the cheapest memory.
And this is usually how it's been. It was weird during the Polaris days, but we're kind of back to the standard of AMD going to a node first, rushing it out the door to try to beat NVIDIA, and then everyone's saying NVIDIA is better, and it's like, well, I don't know. That's just a different way of thinking. They kind of just operate on the other side of the coin. Yeah,
exactly. For me, I like to feel like when I got Radeon 7, I was like, I understand it's not the best value for money. I understand that, but at least I know that these guys aren't ripping me off. At least I know that card probably cost them 500 or 600 quid to make. You know what I mean? At least I know that.
Yeah.
And
so and I actually think this is good because I've never talked about this really publicly. I talked to people on the Discord about it, but this is a good time to talk about. I actually usually push back a lot on the idea. And obviously, look, NVIDIA has an architecture. They're spending 10 times more on R&D. I get that their architecture is good, but the idea that AMD's has to cheat is sometimes how I see it put by using the 7-nanometer node. And it's like, well, not really. You have to take into context what these companies are and what their needs are. So NVIDIA makes millions upon millions of graphics cards at once for laptops, desktop, and I guess they want server, though frankly I don't think their server market share is very good. But the point is, with the laptops and desktops, they need to be able to make like 20 million cards a year, and so they just flat out 7 nanometer is not an option if you need to make that many cards a year. And furthermore, the way they design their architectures, they're always just these gigantic dies. They've literally, as far as I know, never made a small die architecture, really. Like, and so if you're always with that mindset, you need to be able to make millions of these cards, and you need to be able to make them huge. They're never going to choose. It's not that 7 nanometer is an advantage for AMD, although it is. It's just AMD has to use 7 nanometer. And in fact, I think NVIDIA has to use 12 nanometer. And you really need to look at the size of these dies here. I think people go, well, it's on 12 nanometer. Okay, well, then do the math. Like, I know theoretically you get like an 80% density advantage by going to 7 nanometer, but clearly Vega was more like 60% when they shrunk it or something. Yeah. Okay, so apply that to the 2080. It would still be 10% bigger than Radeon 7, even on 7 nanometer. This idea that like, and that's what they did. They made a wide architecture so that if they really made it as dense as possible, it actually wouldn't clock that much higher than 12 nanometer. I don't think it would.
The numbers are actually really weird. The actual die shrink that you got from Radeon 7 was only 33%. Yeah. So that would be, so you take a 700 millimeter, 800, what's it, 750 millimeter square die or whatever. So you take that and you shrink it by 33%. You're down in the 500s. You're not like it's not tiny. It's still huge.
So that's the point. Is it's like that's specifically why I benchmarked my Radeon 7 against it was highly overclocked, so I was fair, but a 2080 Ti, and I'm like, if you really look at it, in the newest games in 4K, it's 20% stronger than my Radeon 7? Guys, it costs twice as much. These are both 4K gaming cards. They have more than 8 gigabytes of RAM, but this is the equivalent, I thought, I was trying to make the argument, of the 4870 versus the 280. It's like, no, except now prices are out of whack. So you have a $700 4870 versus a $1,200 280. And that's and they're both playing games at the highest resolution. Now, I know the 2080 is there, but that's not going to game in 4K for very long, guys. So just forget it. And so it's really should be thought of as like a cheaper 4K card, even though now cheap is $700. Sorry, not my fault.
What really infuriates me is like people tend to use their benchmarks and they tend to see not really a problem with memory and stuff like that, and that's because a lot of the times your graphics memory it overflows into your system memory if you're using more memory. But if you've got slow memory or you've got you're using all your memory that you have in your system for something else, that goes away very quickly. And not only that, it does affect your performance.
Yes,
your
and all benchmarking rigs are never running background tasks or all this other stuff you're usually doing at the same time. They're just a fresh install of Windows, and so they never capture that.
Yeah. It's the same thing with Ryzen. Like, people talk about Ryzen. Oh, you only need six cores is fine for gaming. This is a gaming chip. I'm like, okay, yeah, go ahead. Talk to Tom, who has a quad core with eight threads, and tell me if he tries to run anything in the background, exactly. Just frames per second. It's... The more cores you have, the better. I have issues actually still with my Threadripper where the scheduler is still a bit fecked up. And if I run specific applications, Windows will try and put that on the same thread as I'm running the game on, and I lose frames. That's the scheduler, and it goes away if you turn it into an 8-core. So
Yeah, and that's an open secret too. That if you use Linux, Intel isn't even an option anymore because it's so horribly worse. It's hilarious.
Yeah. But like back to this the NVIDIA stuff. I just can't get over. I can't get over the pricing in any way, shape, and form. I can't wrap my head around it. And then when I seen AMD do the same thing, I was like, And I just want to clarify, the 5700 for me is okay. It's like,
that's what I said too. Well, and I think, by the way, if I keep seeing people in comments try to start shit between YouTube channels. I'm getting annoyed. Like they just go, oh yeah, like they'll say, oh, and it'll even be like Adored said this, Tom, what do you think? And then I like watch the video. I'm like, no, I didn't.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
I think people keep looking for fights, and it's like, and everyone thought I was called a Navi fanboy, but I'm like, did you actually watch what I said at the end of the Navi video? I said, don't buy the 5700 XT, and the 5700 is okay. It's better than a Vega 64, and I guess if you waited, it's technically a better option. And then it's like, well, you said all this good stuff about Navi. Yeah, I did, but it doesn't mean why can't you guys...
Did you hear the new rumors today?
Yeah, which is what I assuming, and I guess I really want to highlight it. Watch any of my Navi videos. I said every single one. I'm telling you, prices are going to come down fast. This is just the initial price. I'm telling you, they're going to come down. Wait for reviews. And yeah, I wasn't sure if they'd come down this fast. But I said by holiday season, and the 5700 XT is going to be 400, and I don't know, the 5700 will be 350 or lower. Just give it a month. You don't need to buy everything at launch, people.
Yeah. Well, I think that right now, if they're going to do a price drop, right now is the time to do it, because. Yeah, well, the normal guy, as you say, the guy who always bought AMD cards, let's put him in the scenario, and he goes, right, well, I always bought mid-tier cards, so now I'm going out with 200 quid. What am I getting? Is this better than the one I have before? Or even somebody who knows a little bit more, enough to compare, and he goes, is this better than the NVIDIA card, or is the NVIDIA card better than... Oh, I don't know what. Like, just go and name your cards in a consecutive order, like Nvidia pretty much does.
Nvidia has figured it out. They even name laptop cards the same now, which I'm a huge fan of.
Yeah, exactly. And it just lets you know kind of where in the stack you're buying. You know that what the top end one is. You know what the mid tier one is, and you know what you're getting for your money. And I did watch an interview with one of the execs from AMD, and they've apologized for that, and they said they're going to fix it. They're going to fix it. This is the start of the naming scheme. They won't change from now on.
Well, so you know what makes me... so then why are you starting at 5?
Yeah. Because it's higher than 2. It's higher than 2, that's why.
Yeah, but you could have started at 3, and then you wouldn't... Because this means they only have a few years to use this naming scheme, which maybe that's long enough for them, but I don't know if it is.
No, they were going to call them the 690, the 680, and the 670, and they decided last minute. And I think...
it was clearly last minute, yeah.
I think that these cars were always going to be sold for 300 and 350. I really think that's where it would be standard AMD launch, because these cards do cost more to manufacture. Not a lot more, but they do cost more to manufacture.
A little more. Honestly, my numbers in my video, on one of my videos, I actually go through the cost to make one of these, and then I add the Lisa Su tax, the 45% tax, and then I came to the conclusion that with a 45% markup, they could be selling the 5700 XT for about $330. And that's still with a 45% markup, people. Yeah.
So, and I think you were being generous in that video.
Oh, I was being generous, as usual. I want to be so conservative that no one could even argue with me.
Yeah, exactly. But like, as I said, but you know, they've got to make that 40. That's a company-wide edict, right? We've got to make 45% because everyone else is making 65%, and investors are wondering why we're not. And that's fine. I understand business decisions, and that's absolutely fine. But if you want to win a market that you are nowhere in, you have to do what you did with Zen, in my opinion. So you have to do which is be disruptive. Zen was disruptive, blew Intel away. Intel had nothing to compete. Intel dithered around, going, "No, it doesn't matter. They're going to go away. They're going to go away. We'll just go. We're Intel. We're going to," and that's what you have to do with a company like Nvidia: is come back with something that's really competitive in performance, but way cheaper. It's the only way that works. And I know people say it didn't work, but that's because NVIDIA cheated and lied. And
well, I'll quote someone in my Discord. Tom continues to be the most bullish person on Navi for some reason. And I'm sticking to it. I really think people underestimate how much of a threat Navi is to NVIDIA. I really think it's going to sell better than people think. And I think you're going to see the new AMD really, really come out with this launch. I think you're already seeing it a little bit, the way they're talking. They don't seem stupid anymore. And I'll just say stupid. Like, remember the 290X reveal? It was like, what reveal? It didn't even happen. They didn't even talk about this car that was blowing away just outrageously inferior NVIDIA cards that were more expensive. And I really think around this launch, apparently Steve at Hardware and Box has had his Navi for days now.
Wow, that's very good.
For a week. So... I'm expecting the NVIDIA fanfare for the first time at this AMD launch. Like that type of the reveals, the drivers are going to be ready, and they're going to I don't think they're going to be evil. I don't know if that's the right word. Like NVIDIA is, like, you can only talk about this, and if you don't talk about how great DLSS is, we'll never send you something. I don't think AMD is going to do that, but I do think they're going to send them kind of a loose script, like, hey, make sure you talk about latency. Make sure you talk about this. And I think you're going to see... I just want to see if this actually works. I'm glad it's going to be at these price points, because I was going to be a little let down if people... Because I still thought, frankly, that Navi was going to capture market share. Probably not a lot, but would capture market share at those prices. But at these prices, I'm okay with it capturing market share. I do. That's what I think is going to happen. I really do. I know people think that it's not enough, but I think something's changed. People are going to buy Zen builds. They're going to buy Radeon because it's called AMD. And that's just how dumb some... I don't want to call people dumb, but
No, you're completely right. Because if you look at the way the market trended, and you look at the CPU, AMD CPU market share, and you trend that with AMD's GPU market share.
Yeah, that's one of my most proud videos. Is when I showed
I never looked. I
didn't
know you did something like that. I literally there's a correlation.
Yeah, it was in my first couple months. It's an old video with a terrible camera, but the chart still looks fine, and I still bring it up. I mean, if you were to go all the way back, it's probably one of my first 20 videos or something. It's like, it said in 2019, AMD Mindshare will capture Radeon market share, and I literally charted Phenom 2, Bulldozer, and I put those markers next to Radeon market share. It literally corresponds 1-to-1, right at Pile Driver. No, actually, right at Ivy Bridge. They just go off a cliff in market share, and you can see it continue to plummet. And what's really funny to me is they were going down during Phenom 1, but when Phenom 2 came out, there was a giant spike in Radeon market share, and I know that's right around, the 5000, 6000 series, and everyone likes those, but I'm just saying, I don't know. It could have just been that Phenom 2's actually challenged Core 2 Duo for about 6 months.
Well, there are people out there who still believe that an AMD graphics card runs better with an AMD CPU. That's all I'm going to say.
Which actually wasn't true during the 7000 series. The opposite was true, if anything.
But what I was going to say is that, like very much like NVIDIA has the 2080 Ti, which is their Halo product, having a CPU, having that's the Halo effect. It has a Halo effect. It brings you in and it makes you go, right, well, I've already got an AMD thing. I'm going to go buy an AMD GPU as well. Like, look at me. I built my PC around all AMD. And like, I didn't do it because I was like, I got to build an all AMD system. I was like, I'm never buying an NVIDIA GPU again.
Yeah, it's more about NVIDIA, too, than Intel for me. And I know some people think Intel's worse. But for me, the difference is at least Intel... As much as they do anti-competitive things, my Intel products fucking work. And my NVIDIA products don't work.
Yeah. Like you don't get artifacts after 2 weeks of having your $1,200 graphics card.
Yeah, Intel would never do something like that. Like, that's so... Yeah, what really blows my mind is NVIDIA gets away with doing it. I don't actually think Intel or AMD ever would.
Well, I have a friend who works at we have an Intel plant here in Kildare, and he was telling me about the validation they do on their chips, and it's mind blowing. He's like, the reason why we have so many different SKUs and so many. I was like, why do you lock everything behind paywalls? And he's like, Paul, the reason why is because we go after server markets, and to go after server markets, you need to have validation and them to know that your validation is perfect. Any kind of scandal will affect that. So they get there. So they even a tiny little variance that might get by AMD or something, or by Qualcomm or whatever, won't get by them. They'll be like, no, that has to be binned down a bit. So for all you say about Intel,
that's always been my opinion too. Now we're officially Intel fanboys, by the way. People, whenever I troubleshoot a PC, you'll be surprised how many people who are more novices go, do you think the processor broke? And my answer is always no.
It doesn't.
They don't. Intel processors don't break. No.
Yeah.
It's your motherboard, probably. No.
Yeah, it's your...
And I'll go as far as to say I don't think AMD processors almost ever break either, but...
Yeah. Well, my fear about the big Navi, just before I get on to what I remember about my stuff that I used to have, like, because I've much longer, more coloured history, I'd imagine, than you. I like the thing about Navi I'm worried about is that this is 40 CUs, and it's 40 CUs at 225 watts. And I just worry, right? We know that it's using the GCN instruction set, but it's a completely new architecture. And some people have said to me, well, they're going to change. It's going to be it's going to RDNA too. And it's going to be different.
Have you watched I think the best architecture deep dive was the one on Gamers Nexus. Did you watch any of those videos?
I did, yeah.
And at least from what I could tell, especially in the very first one they did, where they were just kind of talking in a hallway, it sounds to me like actually RDNA is capable of doing a lot of operations at double the rate that GCN can, but they had to make sure the architecture was backwards compatible. So the way I see it is GCN was also like that versus what is it? I don't know, the Terra, what is it? The 6950?
Terrascale,
yeah. Like, at launch, the 7970 was frankly just like 20-30% stronger than the 580 and about 40% at most than the 6970. Over time, it's about twice as strong as the 6970 now. The 6970 trades blows with the 7850 by now. And that's how I think RDNA may turn out, is they have to make sure it's backwards compatible because they don't have the resources to rewrite everything from scratch like NVIDIA can every few years. And and the way they talked about like wave functions and how they might run, I really think this thing might get so much stronger than people think. And the power usage thing for me is like, so this is one of my conspiracy theories here, but I really think what happened is Navi came out, it scales how as well as they wanted, but it uses a little more energy. And then they also figured out some things that will make RDNA 2 better. So they're like, well, if RDNA 2 is going to be this much better, maybe we shouldn't have a big RDNA 1 lineup. Maybe we should just save our money and focus on having a full lineup with RDNA 2. But in the meantime, Navi 12, which they now call Navi 10 in my opinion, that was Navi 12. They're like, well, it uses more energy, but it's more powerful than we thought it would be. This is our best one so far. So let's just overclock the living shit out of this thing. And if we do, it can get close to a 2070. And we'll just put that there. And then you know what? That Radeon 7 we weren't going to launch, we'll launch it. And we'll just keep that up there. And we're going to keep this there. And then that's what I think's going on. Is I don't know how much better RDNA 2 is actually going to be, besides probably having some better ray tracing capabilities. But I do think it's going to be more efficient. I think they figured out some ways of helping the efficiency, and they're like, okay, well, cancel the 5800 XT. Again, there will be a 5800 XT, but I think it's going to be RDNA 2. And I think these are all placeholder products, basically.
I think there is a way to make it more efficient, and it's the most simplest way to make things more efficient. Drop clock speeds, add more cool cores.
I know, and I thought they would.
And I think that with if they're gonna put 60 CUs or 80 CUs or whatever they're gonna put in the big version of Navi, they're going to drop clock speeds. I really believe they are, because if you remember back in the day, like the smaller dies tended to clock higher, but they tended to have less compute units, so they wouldn't perform as well. And what's happened is over time, because basically, you've made your pipeline longer, you were able to get more clock speed out of these bigger dies. But adding more compute units didn't necessarily... You had a lot of stalling compute units, a lot of compute units that weren't doing anything.
Yeah.
Because you had a lot of compute units that weren't doing anything, it didn't necessarily make it faster by adding more. Well, you were getting less of it. You were getting a diminished return as you added more. But with these new compute unit designs, from my understanding of it, they've made the pipeline wider. So they've made it wider rather than longer. So clock speed is probably going to be harder to achieve on this architecture. But having more IPC done in every cycle is going to be easier to have. So I imagine adding more compute units will actually... But it's just that the fact that these are 40 compute units and they're at 225 watts now. That's my only concern. I'm not saying that it's damaging.
Yeah, and that's what I think is, and it is higher than hey, look, when I saw 225 watts, I was like, really?
Yeah.
But I really think they're just going to drop clock speeds, and I think they're going to go over 64 compute units. And at least if they don't, I'm going to start questioning what's going on anymore, because
at least they can this time.
Yeah.
At least they can this time. Because like people were like, there's a hard limit to GCN 60. No, it's not. It's just there's no point in adding more.
There's no point, yeah.
Yeah, you won't get any more, performance out of it.
So, I don't know about you, but when people can complain about noise, I'm like, I don't know if you guys know what loud actually is. I remember when cards were all much louder. Like, because people complain about Vega 64 like it's a cheap cooler. Actually, no, Vega 64 doesn't have a cheap cooler. It's cooling a 300-watt card. It's actually outrageously quiet for a blower fan that's cooling that much energy.
Yeah. Go back and use a 4870 X2 and I'll tell me it's not quite like that thing was unbelievably loud. And then the Fermi card is even louder.
As long as it's quieter than a 290X, I think it's fine. Yeah,
well, those stock I've had several of those stock blower style coolers and they are atrocious.
But they're not worse than the 480, right?
No, they're worse than the 480.
Oh,
they're
really?
worse than anything I've ever seen. They're worse than my wife's hairdryer, and that's not a euphemism or like genuinely they actually sound louder than a hairdryer. 100%.
The only reason I know how loud they are actually because I hate when they show them in videos or reviews. They're just like, this is what it sounds like. I'm like, I have no clue what it actually sounds like unless it's next to me. And I use them in a mining rig during the mining craze. Like, there's one of the ones I could still get cheap enough that would be profitable. And so, yeah, I had them in my back room, and I was like, oh, these things are pretty loud, huh? Just so everyone knows, not everyone always looks at a blower cooler and goes, oh, it's going to be so loud. It's like, no, they're not all the same. Trust me.
Yeah, well, to clarify, the new Navi cards will not be loud.
I don't think so either. I think
they will be hot as balls, but they will not be loud. It will be about 80 degrees.
And again, keep in mind, if they could keep the Vega 64, at least yes, if you turn up the fans, it's loud, but just don't do that, you bloody idiot. But, like, the Vega 64 at stock, I thought was plenty fine on a blower cooler. It was fine. It wasn't great, but it was fine. And this is going to use, like, 30% less energy. It really isn't going to be that loud, guys.
Yeah, but here's the big thing as well. They're using, so if you, like, people would compare this blower style cooler to the RX 480,
which they should.
If you look at the size of the RX 480 cooler, it's half the size of the Vega card cooler, and the Vega card cooler was much bigger, but it was cooling a 500 millimeter square die. This is a 251
exactly.
So yeah, it will be up in the 80s, I'd say.
And the 480, if you looked at the heatsink, it just looks. When I held the Vega 64, it felt actually fairly premium to me. And then if you look at it felt heavy. That had a back plate. The 480 didn't have any of that. The cooler felt way cheaper and lighter. Yeah.
Still felt good for a $200 graphics card.
Oh, it was fine though too. Again, but then you have 150 watts versus 300, and I'm pretty sure they'll use one almost as good as Vega 64 for something using 40% less energy at smaller.
Wait, no, this cooler is bigger. Have you seen it? It's big.
No,
it's a big cooler.
I mean, I've seen how it looks. I haven't seen. Is it bigger than Vega 64's?
It's about the same size, if not a bit bigger, and it's got the back open as well. So it's got so it'll suck air from the.
Yeah, there's no way this won't be quiet. I think it's going to be fine. People forget that like some of the Nvidia cards had really good blower coolers at first too. I mean Kepler Maxwell days, and as long as those cards are below 250 watts, a blower cooler is fine. In fact, it's almost better because it doesn't heat up your case.
Yeah, no, I agree at the same time, but it's the reason why they use this is because it's cheaper, and I hated when I heard that AMD exec say, we use it because we don't trust certain people to cool their cards. I'm like, that is that's a complete lie. I know when people are lying, you're lying because it's cheaper. You used it to save money. Tell the truth.
It's not as cheap as people make it out, because again, not all blower coolers are the same. They're not all the same, but it is for sure cheaper than what's on Radeon 7. I agree.
Yeah. Like, and they Navi can do HBM as well, by the way. Like, Navi 100% can do HBM,
which I think they might want to consider doing again. I've thought about that because it's like, it's not even about energy savings, although obviously that's a big deal. It's about, hey, if high-end cards are going to cost $1,000, hey, you got the room now. Might as well just throw HBM on it to get that advantage.
Yeah. That's what I'm like, and that's what infuriated me when I first did my first video. Like, I did my first video about Navi. I was raging. I was so angry, and I shouldn't have done a video. I should have took a while away, maybe done a video after that, not done the video then. But I did the video then, and it just really annoyed me was people saying, "This is a replacement for Vega. This is a replacement for Vega." And I'm like, no, it's not.
It's a replacement for Vega's price point.
Yeah, exactly. But it's a replacement for Polaris. It's like die size and that's what it is.
I think the perfect comparison is the 7870.
Exactly. Yeah.
A little more expensive to make than Polaris, but no, it's not Vega.
Yeah, exactly. And like the replacement for Vega is coming. It's called Navi 20. It's going to have ray tracing. It's probably the type of silicon they're using in the new consoles.
Oh yeah.
And that's what you're getting. Because I've heard 12 to 14 teraflops. That's the rumor that's going around. And I have a couple of people who talk to me, and that's pretty much 12 to 14 teraflops, which would make sense because like that would be what 30 to 40% faster than these guys, which is about what Vega was.
So I've been very outspoken about this too. I guess I want to come back to your history, but let's talk about this now. I really think the wake-up call to PC gamers is going to be the PS5. I think people are going to look at the performance and the price and go, oh my God, this is how much we're being ripped off. Because if you do the math right, so for instance, I was very conservative with Navi pricing to manufacture, but AMD is happy to sell them at like 10-20% markup to Sony. So we're talking about a graphics card that's probably, and again, it's a year from now, so prices will be cheaper. We're talking about a graphics card that's probably $200 to make. The worst yields 2 4-core chiplets. That means they're half disabled Zen 2 cores. This is going to be crazy cheap. Like, we're talking about a console that probably costs between $450 and $550, maybe $600 to make, and Sony's happy to sell it at a 10% loss. I really think we're getting Radeon 7 performance or higher for $500, and it's going to have some really, really cool custom features. And people are going to look at it and go, wait, that's the price of... I mean, I guess by then the 3070 will be out, but... That's the price of a 3070, and it's stronger. How's that possible? And it's going to be like, that's how much you've been ripped off, guys.
Yeah. Yeah, I had an Xbox 360.
Yep, and that's not a coincidence. And I really think it's going to happen again. That people forget the 8800 Ultra. They're selling that for the equivalent of $1,000 now.
Oh, yeah.
And that is when, and let's think, what happened back then? AMD fell apart. Well, Radeon fell apart for a little bit. NVIDIA was starting to rebrand and sell the same performance for the higher prices over 3 years. And then the consoles came out and raffle stomped everything. That's what's going to happen right now. I think it's happening again.
Oh, 100%. Because like, I remember when those consoles launched, you could not build a PC as fast as those. You just could not. And that's what annoys me. People are saying these consoles are going to be $400 and $500. Get a life. They're going to cost $6+. Well, they're going to be worth it.
I think there's no way Sony would charge more than $550. That's my opinion. No way.
I think if they know that Microsoft are going to charge a bit more, they're going to be cheaper than Microsoft offering anyway. They're definitely going to do that.
So here's the thing. I've actually been planning to do a console series analysis because I actually love all computer hardware. I see people on my channel go, why are you talking about consoles? It's like, because they got really cool chips. What are you talking about?
Yeah, exactly.
And like the Xbox One X, frankly, I wish that would have come to a PC. But but we don't need to get off subject on that one. But like when I look at this stuff, I keep seeing the information change. I keep postponing when I'm doing this series. And frankly, someone said this to me. There's no need to do a console series when we have Zen 2 coming out. Just talk about that for now, which I agree with. But eventually I'm going to have to. But I'm telling you, I've talked to people that work at Microsoft. They're changing their specs. I really think there's this arms race going on where Sony and Microsoft are like looking over the fence and going, change it quick. They're going to do this. And I really think that I think PlayStation Experience, there's a reason Sony skipped E3. It's because, frankly, they don't need to do anything anymore. They've won this gen. And they're just going to save their time, save their energy for PlayStation Experience this December. And that's when so we have a few more months where they can tinker with what they're doing before the very end. And I think it's just going to, I really think that they're going back and forth and going, change this, change that. So that's why I've just stopped paying attention. I'll just look at it in 2 months because I really think they're both trying to cobble together something incredible. at this
Yeah,
point.
they are. And it's going to be 30 or 40% faster than Navi, what we have now. And it's going to have amazing CPU. And that's the fundamental thing. And you're going to be able to use keyboard and mouse.
Their goal is to slowly turn Xbox into a PC gaming app without killing their brand. And I think it's going to be a slow 10-year grind where they slowly merge it into a PC gaming app. And then in 10 years, people will just go, oh, wait, where's Xbox?
Yeah, that's it. It's to get you onto that subscription service.
Which is a better business model, by the way, than what they're doing.
Yeah, and you know what? I'm okay with them doing something like selling you an all-in-one gaming PC and just call it what it is. $500 or $600 gaming PC.
But, so, you swore off? You didn't probably swear off, but you didn't PC game as much around the 360 generation. So, like, I'm guessing your first good build when you knew what you were doing was before that, though, right?
Oh, yeah. Like, I had a when 1 gigahertz was the thing to have, the AMD 1 gigahertz chip. I can't remember which one it was. I had that, and I had all of the kind of stuff to go with it. And I actually at one point I had a Radeon Pro. Was the fastest graphics card in the world. I can't remember what it was now. But when I really got back into it was 2008 or 2009. I got my
okay.
I got a quad core Phenom
2.
The Phenom.
Oh, you got the one.
9850 Black Edition. I got a HD 48.7, and the reason why I got the Black Edition because it was like €100 or pounds, was it? No, euro. €100 for that. It was like being discounted in a shop near me. They don't exist anymore. They shut down. But it was just a deal. It was on clearance, so I got it, and I got the motherboard to go with it. And I could overclock it 3 gigahertz. As far as I know, I was the only one to get it to go 3 gigahertz. Everybody else was saying it could only do 2.9. Well, mine did 3 gigahertz. 4 gigabytes of RAM and HD 4870, and then I got a 4890, and then I got a 4870 X2, and then I got a Q6600. And like I just kept incrementally upgrading that kind of way, and then I got a i7 920, and I had that for years.
Oh, my brother had one of those. That was a really good one.
4 gigahertz, yeah. 4 gigahertz.
Yeah, and it had 8 threads. I mean, frankly, I know there's still people with them.
And triple channel memory.
Yeah, I know. Yeah, that thing, if you had 6 gigabytes of RAM and an i7 920, it honestly, like, it probably still works okay. It's at like 30, 60 frames a second to this day, because, yeah, I mean, that was the first real i7.
Yeah, it was the first, like, blow the front doors off. Everything just ran. Everything was amazing. Everything was fast. It was 4 cores, 8 threads. It did 4 gigahertz. It was a 2.66 gigahertz part that went to 4 gigahertz. I was like, what? And and I had it in a Cosmos S case, which was like a crazy expensive case. I just had everything that I wanted at that point. I was working a job, I was doing well, I was making loads of overtime, and I spent my money on PC gaming hardware.
Yeah, I know which. Yeah, the 390X was the first card I got when I had a great job. I mean, I had jobs before it, but like where I was like working for one of the big automotive companies, and I like had money, and I was like, no, I know I should get a 390 instead, but no, I don't want to. I have a thing with not buying cut down dies. I've noticed. Same.
Yeah.
I want the full one.
Yeah, even though it makes no sense.
That makes absolutely no sense. I know.
Like the Vega 56 compared to the 64.
Oh yeah. I tell everyone,
it's a no-brainer.
Yeah,
it's a no-brainer. Like 2 or 3 frames per second difference if you do the appropriate things to the Vega 56. And yeah, no, I had to have the Vega 64. No. I bought a Vega 56 and it rotted me to the point where I had to buy a 64.
Yeah, it's the first PC I think I knew what I was doing. It was actually a laptop because I was going to college for mechanical engineering, so my parents were willing to get me an expensive laptop that could do modeling and all of that stuff. And that was like 2010. And yeah, I got a Celeron, but it was the same architecture as Core 2. And it was when I was doing research, and I was like, okay, so you don't really want a quad core quite yet. So I got, especially in a laptop. And so I got this 3 gigahertz dual core, which was actually really powerful for the time. Still works kind of fine. Well, not today. 5 years ago, it still worked fine. But and it had a GT 130M, which was kind of back then their 60 mobile version. It was not very strong, but man, compared to what I had before that, it was, I could play Crysis. Like, like
GT 130 was a fine graphics card.
Yeah, and I mean, it could obviously did all my engineering work well, but I like, and I remember that was the days where you were fine with 30 frames, even 25 frames a second if you could turn up Crysis graphics, and I could. And I just remember playing that game in 720p at ultra settings at 25 frames a second, but I was just so blown away by the graphics, it was worth it. And it's just never worth it anymore, of course.
M11X, which was like the really small, it was called a gaming netbook.
I love those. I love the era of gaming netbooks. I've always thought that was a cool idea. Oh, I have one still.
This was 11 inches, 11 inch screen, 8 gigabytes of GDDR3. DDR3.
Yeah.
An i7. It had an i7, but it was one of them mobile crappy ones.
Yeah, it was a dual core. Yeah, I know.
Dual core with hyper-threading. And
I remember this laptop very well. I thought it was one of the coolest laptops I've ever seen.
Was like, I played StarCraft, right? I still play StarCraft. And when playing StarCraft, that could play StarCraft at medium detail, 100 frames a second.
Yeah. My first small gaming laptop was actually a Bobcat APU. Which wasn't the best, but I remember being blown away because I'm an Age of Empires person, and I remember playing Age of Empires 3, which actually for the time, Age of Empires 3 had the best graphics of any RTS I've ever seen.
And it was very demanding, for the time.
It looked like you could blow up parts of a building, kind of like Battlefield, and it would actually show it correctly, blowing up parts of buildings during a fight. And I remember the Bobcat could run that at mostly high settings in 768p at like 30 frames a second. And this was a 11-inch netbook that had and again, for now it's not that impressive, but back then it had a 6-hour battery life. And that was in 2000, I want to say 13 actually, because this is when I was hopping between laptops. And I remember getting that and going, oh wow, this can run Oblivion, this can run this can run Age of Empires 3 maxed out. This is the future. These 11-inch gaming laptops, and that's when I really learned I will always trade performance in a laptop for portability, because if you can't move it somewhere, why do you have a laptop?
Mm-hmm. The M11X actually came out in 2010.
Oh, I know. I remember it because I was like, wow. This was the first one that was really impressive.
Yeah, I couldn't remember when I got it, but I remember StarCraft had just come out as well, so that'll tell you, being able to play a brand new game, medium settings.
Yeah, and that netbook's actually what convinced me to build a gaming desktop, because I had that 19-inch gaming HP laptop, which was actually very thin, but its battery life was, let's be honest, 45 minutes. And it overheated, and I was like, I started to find that even on trips, I was using this netbook that could play Age of Empires and Oblivion more than I was using this big gaming laptop. And I was like, I think I just need to get rid of this laptop and build a desktop, because this is clearly the way to go. You want a small laptop that isn't crazy expensive, unless you have the money. And then you want that laptop to last, a whole day without charging if you can, and just because then it's portable. And then you want a gaming desktop, and that's when I did all this research. I got a 560 Ti, Ivy Bridge i5, which I actually got for like $200 a few weeks after it came out on eBay, and then 8 gigabytes of RAM, which the RAM was defective, had to send back, and of course a hard drive and stuff. And I remember that, and then I booted up Crysis. I booted up Far Cry. No, it was for Crysis, and I remember going, "Oh my God! Now I can play it at 60 frames and 900p. Everything's changed."
Yeah. Well, that's the experience I had when I went from the HD 4890. I could play Crysis at maximum settings at 1050p, I think it was at the time, 1600 and something like 1050. I could play it at that at like 40, 50 frames a second maximum detail, and then I got a HD 4870X2, and it was like 70 frames per second. I was like, wow.
I remember too when that was like a big deal. I still think I did a whole video on the changes of frame rates over time. I'm like, really go back and watch reviews of the 3870 and 4870. They literally said on AnandTech, and it got past the magical 30 frames per second. They called 30 frames magical. Everyone bragging about 200 FPS just needs to understand that frame rates are going to keep increasing, because we used to be happy with 24 frames, frankly.
That's what they used to say. They used to say 24 for anything under 24 frames per second wasn't playable, because that's the cinema quality, cinema's frame rate or whatever.
Which is kind of true, actually. I'm going to be honest. You can get by if the minimum drops to 24, but you don't want it to be. I would say the average needs to be at least 28. In my experience, or it feels like complete shit. But as long as the minimums are staying above like 20, you're kind of okay, actually, guys. I know if the game's good.
Well, it won't affect your gameplay that much as long as it's a single player game. What I find though to me
online,
is
you'll get destroyed, but
what I find is that like I did a video where I was like, don't buy a 144 hertz monitor, and like I know I was like, I know what you're saying, but like literally don't buy one, because once you do, you will have to have 144 hertz forever.
I have one. I have to. I'm not upgrading
it's not.
Until. And by the way, my TV that I don't really play games much anymore. So like I've been trying to play through Sekiro, because it's one of my favorite. I like Demon Souls, Dark Souls. And so I just take the time once every few weeks to unplug my desktop, plug it into my OLED TV, and it runs at 120 hertz there too. And it's like, I wouldn't buy a TV until it had native 120 hertz 4K, because I'm not going below it again. And once you get I saw the thumbnail for that video, by the way. I didn't watch it, but I knew exactly everything you were going to say.
I was like, oh my god! Like I have a 60 hertz monitor directly beside me, and I can't even move icons around on the desktop. Whatever.
Even like just doing things in Word feels worse. And I remember my brother coming over once, and this is the first time he saw that, and he gets out. He started playing. What was it? It was like a Battlefield 1. Like had like a beta server you could play in to try out new maps. And so I was like, hey, Dan, check out this new map. And so he starts playing it, and he's like, why does everything look clearer? And I'm like, because it's at 144 hertz. And I think that was even like when I was like jumping between graphics cards, and like, oh yeah, that's when I was like modifying my mining cards. So that was just with like a R9 380. And even that was running at about 100 hertz in Battlefield 1, and he was just like, this. The way I describe it to people is, if you've watched a good 3D movie, assuming you're not one of the people that gets a headache from a 3D movie, it's kind of the same effect. It's like you look at things and they just look more real. Because the human eye sees actually at about, we see shadow movement at 1,000 frames per second. So when you go from 60 to 144, trust us, you'll see the difference.
Yeah, that's the only way I can describe it, is that when I put it on, when I literally put my first monitor, like this monitor cost 700 quid, right? And I was like, it's 32 inches, 1440p, FreeSync, 144 hertz, VA panel. And I put it down and I went, right, the colours look nicer. This 144 hertz is nonsense though, because it's my first ever over 60 frames. I was like, this is nonsense. This is absolute crap. I can't see a difference. Played a few games, didn't really notice a difference. But when I did notice, I noticed it looked a little bit, but because bear in mind I'd completely upgraded my monitor, so the colours looked nicer, it looked sharper.
Yeah, everything looked better, so it's no surprise.
But I was like, I can't see that this looks like. And then I went over and I played the game on the other monitor, which is the exact same resolution.
Honestly, that's the best part of the PlayStation 4 Pro or the Xbox One X, is just the frame rate's at least stable. The last thing I did want to cover was just the unprecedentedness, which maybe I'll do a video on it. We'll see. But I think our conversation would be good. Two things then, I guess. Number one, what did you expect for Ryzen 1? I mean, a few years ago, Ryzen 1, like, what did you expect it to be before it was clear what it would be?
I expected it to be an unmerciless disaster. Like I just expected it to be an absolute, complete and utter flop. I had no hopes for it. I was excited for it. I just thought that AMD are going to launch this product and Intel are going to release something that they have on their shelves and crush them. And that's generally what I thought. And I didn't realize how much Intel didn't take them seriously.
Okay,
and
so what I was thinking...
Unmitigated disaster as well.
I was thinking, well, what would be cool, though, is if this has Sandy Bridge IPC, and then it runs maybe at lower clock speeds, but it costs half as much. So I was I did always expect it to be more efficient, actually, just from everything I was reading. So I was like, so if they make like a, I don't know, 100-watt 8-core at 3.5 gigahertz that has Sandy Bridge IPC, that'll be good enough to really shake up the market. And maybe, and this will be great for people who do non-gaming stuff. That's what I expected, because they were really, I don't think they were sandbagging, but they were only showing what they can. Everyone always, so AMD's actually very honest lately since Lisa Su took over. They show you themselves at their best light, but they never lie, right? So you have to keep in mind, whatever they're showing you right now with Navi is not cherry-picked, but it is the best way to portray Navi. So it's probably going to be about a little weaker than a 2070 Super, and they're going to make it look like it's about the same, but they're not lying. And so that's what I expected for Ryzen, but what did you expect what did you think once you saw the reviews, though, or the numbers, I should say?
Well, I shouldn't say that. We both of us shouldn't have been surprised, because they gave us 40% IPC. That was the number they quoted, right? And so you would think that it would be like a Sandy Bridge or an Ivy Bridge IPC kind of level. And then you see 50-something percent IPC, and you're like, what? So when I seen it, I thought, yeah, this is going to really change everything. And then I seen the gaming reviews and people talking about gaming reviews. And I was like, oh
I know. The fact that
God,
they even
these people have missed the point. Completely.
Yeah, that really pissed me off.
Like, it's not faster in game. 100% not. But somebody to tell you that you have to buy an i7 7700K for gaming in 2017 is absolutely completely not.
It was all horse shit, and it really Adore did one of his better videos where he says the gaming tech press misses the plot. Like, they
loses the plot.
Didn't get what was going on here. I was absolutely floored by its performance. I said, this is game over. Intel's in serious trouble for the next 5 years, because AMD managed to make something that's cheaper to manufacture, has, as far as I could tell in the reviews, about the same IPC, close enough. And they were, it's not clocked as high, but it's a 95-watt 8-core. 95, not 140 watt, 95. And when I looked at the gaming performance, I was like, guys, it's like 10% worse. This is ridiculous.
Yeah. And it's not making your game run at 40 frames per second.
Yeah,
I know. I mean, this is the thing. It was making your game run, like, you could only detect it if you were going above 100 frames a second anyway. And
they even said it felt smoother, though, too, because of the background tests.
Exactly. So for me, I was like, I have shit open all the time. Like, if you look at my desktop tray now, I've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11 programs open right now. And that's not even talking about my system tray, which probably has another 5 or 6. That's the way I run my PC. I have an awful lot of RAM. Why not use it? And I'm like, I can go play a game and it won't be affected because I've got cores dealing with all the other stuff and I'm playing my game. And I hear all these stories of people now with 8700Ks and the Windows update and their frame rate drops to nothing, or, they're talking to friends on Skype in the background. And
yeah. So what's interesting is that used to happen to me in Battlefield 1, and they said in that game, actually, specifically, they said this would happen. Especially with the 7700K, which I have a 6700K, so, same thing. And
same thing, yeah, just 200 megahertz.
Well, and mine's not running at stock either, so...
so same thing.
And it would do that. It usually feels incredibly smooth, and then it would just drop to 90 for a second and go back up, and I was like, what the fuck was that? And to be clear, that actually doesn't happen much anymore. So I don't know if they actually fix something in a Windows update, but that's the type of stuff you got to worry about when you have less than, and I'll just say less than 12 threads.
Yeah, exactly. Because people, when I say cores, in fact, in some situations, a 6700K or a
Yeah, I know.
7700K
I know where you're going.
can be better than a 6-core part.
When
hyper
I saw
threading.
the i5s, I was like, "This is stupid. This is
Yeah.
worse. This is dumb."
Yeah, yeah. Like so, and when I seen the 8-core part with no hyperthreading, I was like, "That's dumb. That's stupid." Like, because the 8700K can be
Yeah,
as fast, if not faster than it. Like, it's,
Well, now we know why
you know,
they're disabling that, but
yeah, exactly.
but yeah.
So
I guess to bring it back though is I mean, and this has been this weird thing where I'm like, guys, I really don't think you guys understand. This is all hands on deck at Intel right now. They are freaking out. And when I saw the 8700K, I just said, "That's it? That's what you got?"
Yeah.
And I was like, so everyone going, and I saw this. Actually, you don't see it anymore because everyone knows they were wrong. But in 2017, you constantly saw, "Just wait for what Intel's been hiding in their vaults." I'm like, guys, if they had something, they would have launched it by now. They're not happy.
Yeah, exactly.
So
and they
scary.
didn't have anything.
And I think that's the biggest...
But they did, that's the thing. They did. They could have dropped prices, and they didn't.
Yeah.
Because they just ignored Zen. They just said, nobody's going to buy this.
It's like a profound succession of the same mistake over and over. And I really think, and that's kind of what I broke down in a couple of my Intel videos. I really think they thought Ryzen 1 was kind of it. That AMD had shot their load and they're done. And so they're like, we'll launch the 6-core early and we'll bring out the 8-core as soon as we can. And that's all we need. We beat the 2700X. And I don't think they realized that AMD, and that's what I really hammer home with my Zen 3 Whispers video. Really, AMD planned 4 generations in 2013. We're not halfway through AMD's attack on Intel. Zen 2 is the almost halfway point. Zen 3 is when we're finally kind of halfway. And Zen 4, I know nothing about Zen 4, but Jim's at least said he thinks Zen 4 is as big as Zen 3. And I'm very outspoken that I think Zen 3 is the nail in the coffin, not Zen 2.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. It could be, but I think Zen 2 is going to...
And everyone, and some people, I don't think you are like this, but I think some people got really mad when I released my Zen 3 info. And it's because they're like, well, I just want to buy my Zen 2 and be happy. And it's like, no, they're not done, guys. I'm just, be happy with your... And I think Zen 2 is going to be the biggest increase for gaming, to be fair. But Zen 3, everything I've been told is it's dropping power consumption in half again and increasing thread count. And that's just as big of a deal. Again, that's like Ivy Bridge. Ivy Bridge didn't really increase gaming performance, but it cut power consumption in half when AMD already looks stupid.
Yeah, sometimes the talks can be bigger than the ticks. You know, this is what people don't know. Like, I mean, Zen 3, which I think is like a talk. It's not a tick. It's like, isn't it going to be on the 7nm plus or something like that?
My understanding is Zen 3 is... So, Zen 2 is a tremendous deal. They're moving to this chiplet design. So, I guess it's up for debate. What's the bigger deal? But my understanding is that Zen 3 actually is a complete redesign again. And so, they're adding cores potentially. At least Jim seems to think they are. What I know for sure is they're adding threads. So, we're going to have, so whatever they have now, they're going to have a 16-core, 48-thread going up against whatever dumb thing Intel has. And that's going to look so... I mean, think of Threadripper. Think if they actually do it. They actually released a 64, 192-thread Threadripper.
Yeah. Well, you know that there's talk of a 64-core Threadripper coming this year or next year, which is... That, I think we've all underestimated AMD. If they come with a 64-core Threadripper, we've all underestimated. We've all went like, there's no way.
I've always been 50-50. I thought it makes more sense to just go to 48 cores. And actually not to hold back, but just because I don't think Windows can even use 32 cores.
Yeah, well, it can't. The 2990WX Windows makes an absolute shit show of that. But like... At the same time, there are workloads where you can use 32 cores and 64 threads.
Sure.
If you're trying to do multiple things at once. If you're rendering a video while encoding another one, while that's genuinely using your PC and using your cores and threads at it. You know what I mean? And you could have 2 monitors with 2 different PCs running off the same system.
Exactly. And I think what people... I mean, that 32 core with Zen Plus was a surprise. Like, no one expected them to launch a Threadripper with 32 cores on 12 nanometer out of nowhere like that. And so I'm not really surprised if they, from my point of view, do it again. Like, we have a 16 core on AM4. I guess why not? I don't know. Like, and this is so, I guess too, right? The way you might want to think about it is this is going to be so easy for AMD to just make Intel look stupid from a marketing perspective just by launching the 64 core. I mean, I guess why not then? If you can take that mind share, I don't think it will actually be that great for most people. For even most people that might want a lot of cores. I think the 64 is going to be almost useless. But
well, here's some statistics for you that I didn't know. Right, AMD have said this openly, so it's true that Threadripper is the best-selling HEDT platform in the market.
I know that. I knew they were selling better.
And the highest core count CPUs are their best-selling product in the Threadripper lineup.
Yeah, I know the 16 core sells incredibly well, but they're saying the 32 does also?
Yeah, they're saying that the top selling product is the top. That's why. So it makes sense then why they're doing this, because we're forgetting that there are budget conscious film creator studios.
Oh, it's been a godsend. Imagine if you've been slumming it with 10 core i9s or i7s, and then out of nowhere for the same price, which the 6950X was $1,700 for the same price. All of a sudden, you can get a 32 core. That's so insane. Like, you must be sitting there. If I was someone that actually made use of that, I would be losing my mind with how much I love AMD at this point, to be honest.
They just didn't take AMD seriously. So now we know how not seriously Intel take AMD. And even now, that memo that they released internally was like,
I know. This is why I'm really concerned about Intel as a company. Obviously, I don't think they're going to go out of business or anything. But guys, AMD's basically tied in performance right now. They're about to double it again, and they're going to double it again with Zen 3. And the reason Zen 3 is such a big deal is that's supposed to be the one that adds a gigabyte of 3D stacked memory to 4 threads per core. So I think, yeah.
Like as a cache, like as an on...
Yeah, they're going to supposedly have a gigabyte of cache and 4 threads per core, and they might even go to 10 cores instead of 8 cores per CCX. If they do that, if there's a 20-core, 80-thread AM4 chip with a gigabyte of cache, I mean, AMD can charge $1,000 at this point. Like, this is, and the thing that worries me about Intel is it's like, so where do they even price? And we know Intel's got nothing but 10 cores for the next 3 years. So where are they going to price that 10 core? $200? Because it's going to be competing with, and I think they're going to limit it to 3 threads per core on desktop. But so it's going to be competing with what, a 10 core, 30 thread? Because
that's my big problem with the tech price, though, is that they're talking about Intel, waiting for what Intel are going to bring, as if Intel are going to bring something, but also forgetting and not thinking about the fact that AMD are not standing still. They keep acting like AMD are going to stand still. This AMD, that's all they've got. We're just going to add more cores, no more RPC, blah blah blah. They're not going to innovate at all. What are Intel going to do to innovate in this market? Intel are going to bring around Foveros. Intel are going to bring around this. Intel are going to. But AMD are going to do it.
But AMD's already 3D stacking. They have 2.5D stacking with HBM, and they have Infinity Fabric. So the reason Intel's talking about Foveros is they want everyone to think they'll be ready, but AMD's ahead of them in 3D stacking, ahead of them in Infinity Fabric. There's no objective reason Intel would bring this 3D stacked chip out before AMD does. And again, I fully admit, I don't, and by the way, I think Zen 3 may be on 6 nanometer, at least 7 nanometer plus. And I don't know what Zen 4 will be, but I know it's going to be on 5 nanometer, and I know that doubles density. So, I mean, we can guess at least 50% more cores probably. And at that point, they'll probably just stop because I don't know if there's a need for more than 24 cores on desktop. But once they do that, and again, Jim seems real confident whatever Zen 4 is doing is as big as 3. So I don't know what it's going to do, but
we'll see.
I mean, they could have an integrated scheduler where they have 24 times 3, so 96 threads, and then there's a scheduler utilizing multiple threads like it's a single core. I mean, that's the next holy grail. So if they did that before Intel, I honestly worry what Intel could do as a company.
Yeah, I don't see anything from them that says they're going to they're getting 18% IPC in their next generation, but they're losing a shit ton of clock speed to get there.
It's only quad cores, right?
But
and that's before security patches.
Yeah, but I'd imagine they can do 8 cores. I imagine they can do 6. But I'm just saying that the fact that they've got there and lost clock speed, there's a clock speed regression, tells you that the 10 nanometer, that's the problem with the 10 nanometer process. Whereas AMD have got there and got clock speed as well. And that's the most important.
Okay. What I was all leading this towards is how unprecedented the Zen 2 victory is going to be. I don't know how many other things you've watched. I think this is a bigger deal than Sandy Bridge even versus.
Oh yeah, it is. It's they're going to be double as fast at 700. Like, so for 250 quid more, they're going to be double as fast essentially. For cheaper, they're going to be, for substantially cheaper, they're going to be as fast, and at the same price point, they're going to offer you about 50% extra performance. And it's just game over. Like, there's no, like, what was the 2600K over the Bulldozer parts? It wasn't 50% faster.
Yeah, that's what I keep pointing out too to people is the graphics cards we have now with NVIDIA versus AMD are nowhere near what Sandy Bridge versus Bulldozer was, and yet this is going to be nowhere near Zen 2. I don't know. It was like, depended on the task, I would say they actually had like 50% more IPC and used less energy. But this is going to be, well, double the cores, more IPC, and half the energy. This is a bigger deal than Sandy Bridge. This is a bigger deal than the Athlon 64. This is a bigger. I really think this is going to be the greatest defeat in CPU.
Yeah, well, you can only take what we know about 8 cores. We know 8 core because Intel only have an 8 core, so we can only compare Intel's 8 core to AMD's 8 core. AMD's 8 core is going to be cheaper.
Yep.
It's going to use less power, and it's gonna clock to around 4.5 gigahertz. You can take that to the bank, I'd say, and it's going to have 15% IPC, so 13% over Intel's IPC. So it's going to be faster per core, better multi-threaded because AMD's hyper-threading is better, simultaneous multi-threading is better, and it's going to use less energy. So it's going to absolutely decimate them.
And really the scariest thing, I think, in this defeat for Intel is the fact that 13% IPC may not sound completely crazy, but the 3600's $200. The 3600 has 6 cores. 13% more IPC is going to make that 3600 almost match the 9900K at most things. Yep. Almost. It's as $200 versus $500, almost as strong as the 9900K while using half the energy. Everyone's like, I know we all hoped it would be a little cheaper, but guys, this is why the prices are where they're at, because they're going to match a 9900K for less than half the money. Well, I wish that was happening.
I don't have a problem with the 12 core price, and I don't have a problem with the 16 core price.
The 16 is like a cheaper 16 core than what you bought.
I have a problem with the 3800X. That's the problem.
Yeah, it's a weird one. I don't even know if it's dumb. Well, it is dumb, but it's just weird. It's like, why are there
because they didn't want to call it a 3700X and call the 3700X a 37 because they wanted to get a little bit more money. That's the only reason why. There's no 3700.
That 3600 was going to be the 3500X for like 150 probably.
And I don't think they're up on the 12 core, and I don't think they're up on the 16.
No, it's $400. That's what the 1700X was. So it's 50% more cores. And it's like double the performance.
And AMD drop prices as their node matures.
Exactly.
Intel don't.
Yeah, they do a lot. So the prices will come down too, and they're saving it. They're saving better yields. If Intel responds with anything good, they're gonna go, oh boom, here's the 3620X for they'll just raise 200 megahertz across the board and drop
That's it.
All right, well you probably got to go.
I do indeed.
Well, I hope you guys enjoyed that. I know I sure enjoyed talking to Paul from Not an Apple Fan. I think a lot of people think we disagree on a lot of things, and in fact, we almost agree 100% on everything. We just say things in a different way. I think he looks at the Navi pricing and is quite appalled, and I certainly wasn't happy. Luckily, prices have come down, and like I said in the podcast, I thought they would come down, maybe not that quickly, but I certainly thought they would come down quickly. But if you really listen to both of us, we say effectively the same thing. The price is a bit too high, 5,700's okay. I just say it one way and he says it in another. And I didn't have any intro there in the beginning because I wanted to get to us talking quickly, but I will do an outro question now from Reader Mail. And of course, Reader Mail is submitted on the Discord, which you can become a part of if you support me on Patreon. So let's get to it. This comes from 123897612YSD. I think that's like a bunch of numbers. Then that's not quite yards. Not quite sure what your name is, but it's a long one. He asks, do you think buying a 3950X and switching off SMT would yield the best single-threaded performance of any CPU on the market once it hits shelves? And my answer is yes, but I think I'm going to answer a different question. I think what you're really asking is this the best gaming performance, and that answer is a resounding yes. So the IPC will be higher than Intel by about 5 to 10%, and it will probably clock within 10% of an overclocked 9900KS. So it's going to be narrowly better single-threaded performance. Well, up to 10%, but I don't consider 10% a lot, although certainly some people seem to. But then keep in mind it has double the cores. If you turn off hyperthreading, I mean, yeah, you got 16 full cores versus Intel's 8 cores, 16 threads, and it will be doing so with higher IPC. Yeah, a 3950X at 5 gigahertz with SMT turned off will be the best gaming CPU for sure. But he also goes on to ask what I think about the 9900KS benchmark losing slightly to the 3600 in a leak. And he basically infers that it was a bullshit benchmark. And I agree that I don't expect the 3600 to beat the 9900KS, but I do expect it to be very, very, very close. And we're talking about a 5 gigahertz all-core base clock or whatever for the, or at least boost clock for the 9900KS. And what that means is that damn thing's going to be using 125 watts, at least, most likely 150, 180 watts. And it'll be going up against the 3600, a 65 watt. The fact that they're even within, 10, even 20% of performance, it's just game over. And I think that's what the point of all these Ryzen leaks are. And I think everyone will get that full picture once Zen 2 comes out. And Zen 2 comes out in a few days. So looking forward to that, guys. And I will, of course, cover it as best I can. All right. Thank you for listening to the podcast. Have a good one. Broken Silicon, a PC hardware and gaming podcast, is brought to you by me, Tom, of Moore's Law is Dead, and also co-hosted by my brother, Dan. Please visit Moore's Law is Dead at YouTube to see much more in-depth analysis of AMD, Intel, and NVIDIA products and rumors. Also, if you love this podcast, please subscribe and consider giving me a review on your distributor of choice. It really does help. And if you really like this and my other content, please consider supporting me on Patreon at Moore's Law is Dead. Unlocked or higher supporters get to submit questions and have in-depth discussions with me after videos and podcasts. Plus, there are a lot of intelligent people on the included Discord channel that are having some pretty enlightening hardware discussions right now. I bet they wish you could join them. In fact, I will now give thanks to my NetBurst or higher supporters immediately because I could not afford to dedicate the time or resources necessary to providing this content you like without these supporters. And so, without further ado, well, actually let me say this. This is not a stitched-together edit of every name that I have recorded recently. Every week, I say the same thank yous to all of the names on my list, again, because I want to remember all of the people making this possible. On July 7th, 2019, the following names are the NetBurst 10 GHz supporter level or higher. Bootman, Hunter Drake, Dean, Ruckus, Justin Yant, Thomas Rupp, Tomas Paraj, Jesse Blanton, Jordan Betcher, Mohammed Al-Kawari, Victor Janecki, Matthew Brubacher, Prime Tech, Justin Parrish, Zachary Martin, Terrence Harrod, Calm Marco, Thyrister, The Ninth Dude, and Greg Reniger. Thank you all. And of course, thanks to Paul and I'm an Apple fan for joining me for this episode.